Caleb Morgan never imagined that one day, a single sentence tossed out under the dazzling lights of New York could cut deeper than any blade. "If you can play that piano, I'll marry you." Isabella Harrington's voice rang through the microphone, cold and sharp like the shatter of a champagne glass. Laughter rippled across the ballroom, not because they thought it was funny, but because they were sure he couldn't do it. Outside the Harrington Grand Hotel, flashes from cameras and sweeping spotlights lit up the facade like the premiere of a blockbuster film. The red carpet and marble floors reflected hundreds of gowns, tuxedos, and carefully rehearsed smiles inside. But amid all that opulence, Caleb was only a shadow pushing a janitor's cart down a side corridor. For the past 5 years, he had memorized every echo in this hotel, every hurried step of staff avoiding camera lenses, every glance from VIP guests that slid right past him as though he were space. The most important thing here wasn't wiping away dust. It was making yourself disappear from the frame. A PR staffer, Samantha Torres, brushed past without looking at him, only tossing out, "Caleb, stay clear of the photo area." Her tone wasn't harsh, but it carried the weight of an unbreakable rule, just like the manager had reminded him at the start of his shift. "Buddy, don't walk across the main lobby when guests are getting photographed." That buddy sounded friendly, but it was a way of denying his name. As Caleb hugged the wall near the grand lobby, his eyes accidentally landed on the Steinway Model D grand piano at the corner of the stage. The chandelier light danced across its glossy black finish, sparkling like its private sky. The scent of polished wood drifted to him, and for a fleeting moment, a memory brushed past fingers touching the cool ivory keys. But he quickly looked away. He wasn't here to play. The crowd poured in, heels clicking, glasses clinking, and Isabella Harrington appeared at the end of the aisle. A red silk gown hugged her figure, diamonds along her wrist catching the light like sparks. Her voice carried across the room. "We're here tonight to remind ourselves that hope always has a place." But everything changed when her gaze swept over Caleb. The champagne glass in her hand suddenly tipped, and the golden liquid spilled across the red silk. The entire room froze for a beat. Then, "Do you have any idea how much this dress costs?" Isabella's voice tightened. A guest, Richard Calloway, laughed. A janitor couldn't afford to pay for it. Other laughter followed, reflexive. Someone muttered loudly, "People like you should stay away from here." Caleb straightened, gripping the tray of glasses to keep his hands from shaking. He said calmly, "I can pay for the dry cleaning." But Isabella, exhausted and under pressure after a week of being hounded by shareholders and the press, chose a cruel escape. "If you can play the piano better than a professional musician, I'll marry you." Laughter erupted. Some guests began placing bets of $500 if he could finish the piece, $1,000 if he could last more than 30 seconds. Bills waved in the air, but Caleb shook his head. "I don't want the money. I want you to keep your word in front of everyone here." The room fell into a hush, not because they believed he could do it, but because, for the first time that night, Buddy had spoken his name, Caleb Morgan, and set a condition from which there was no backing down. You've just heard the opening of the story. If you want to know what happens when Caleb steps onto the stage, subscribe to the Soft Why so you won't miss the next part. The atmosphere in the grand hall of the Harrington Grand seemed to thicken. The once warm golden lights now felt like spotlights on an impromptu stage, where every gaze was fixed on a single person. Caleb Morgan set the tray of glasses down on the nearest table. He removed his black gloves, folded them neatly, and placed them aside, a small gesture that felt like he was shedding the invisibility uniform he'd worn for the past 5 years. A renowned music critic, Jonathan Price, stood near the stage, tilting his head slightly in observation. "Let him through," he said, not loudly, but enough for the security team to hear. Darren Blake, the security guard shadowing Caleb all evening, froze. His eyes hesitated for a beat before shifting to the side, opening a path. Isabella Harrington let the corner of her mouth curl, as if still in control of the moment. "The piano's right over there. Mr. Morgan, we're all waiting." That word waiting wasn't so much an invitation as it was a push into a corner. Caleb walked forward, each step deliberate, the sound of his shoes on the marble floor soft but distinct. Every step felt like sweeping away another layer of dust from the years he had spent quietly existing on the sidelines. He stopped at the Steinway Model D, resting his hand on its lid. The surface was so calm and familiar that memories flooded back long nights in a tiny practice room, when his mother was still healthy, and the piano was the only thing that made him believe in tomorrow. He looked up, meeting Isabella's gaze. "Before I play, I want to hear you repeat it. Clearly." Isabella's brow furrowed slightly. In the direct spotlight, every flicker of her expression was magnified. The PR manager beside her nodded subtly, reminding her to lock the story down with agreement. "I'll keep my word," Isabella said, her voice slow and steady. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Some chuckled under their breath. Others exchanged genuinely curious looks. Caleb pulled out the bench and sat. He adjusted the distance, relaxed his shoulders, and rotated his wrists. Jonathan Price touched a finger to his chin, eyes intent. At the edge of the hall, the veteran housekeeper, Maggie Lewis, stood still, her hand clutching a packet of tissues. Caleb's fingers touched the keys, not loudly, not showily. The first note landed like a soft tap on still water, rippling outward into thin, persistent circles. He chose Summertime, a melody that had been with him since his teenage years, but this time, he played it at half pace, letting each pause become part of the music. The low hum of conversation began to recede, as if people were afraid to break the thread of sound weaving through the space. Richard Calloway, who had mocked him earlier, lowered his glass to the table, his eyes fixed on the stage. Caleb didn't look at anyone. He let his hands lead, letting each key tell a story of hospital rooms thick with the smell of medicine, of late-night shifts scrubbing floors after everyone else had gone home, of opportunities shut down because he didn't fit the image. But threaded through it all was light, like sunlight breaking through curtains on a summer morning. Isabella kept her polite smile, but her jaw tightened. She hadn't expected music to make her still. The KPIs, reports, and shareholder pressure all faded for a moment. What remained was the image of a man pouring his entire heart into every note. Jonathan Price leaned slightly toward a colleague and whispered, "Touch and control, at a professional level." It wasn't exactly praise, but more of a statement of undeniable fact. When Caleb let the final note drift into silence, the hall remained still for a few seconds. It wasn't an awkward silence, but the kind born when no one dares break what they've just witnessed. Then the applause burst out, uneven at first, but quickly growing thick and insistent. Maggie Lewis blinked rapidly, swallowing down the tightness in her throat. Darren Blake, the same guard who had blocked Caleb at the door, clapped too awkwardly, but sincerely. Caleb stood, not bowing too deeply, just enough to say thank you with his eyes. And in that look, everyone understood this wasn't just a performance. It was a reminder that no matter how many times you're pushed out of the frame, you can still step into the center of the stage by the strength of your worth. The applause still lingered as Caleb Morgan stepped back from the piano bench. But instead of retreating backstage or returning to his cleaning cart, he remained in the spotlight. His eyes sought out Isabella Harrington. Without any flowery words, he said, "You made a promise in front of everyone." That single sentence stopped the murmurs that had just begun to rise again. Jonathan Price tilted his head slightly, watching Isabella's reaction. In the front row, Richard Calloway shifted in his seat, his expression half a smirk, half anticipation for the next bit of entertainment. Isabella pressed her lips together. In her mind, spreadsheets, shareholder meeting schedules, and potential online headlines ran parallel with the image of the piano and the man who had just played as if music were the very blood running through his veins. PR manager Samantha Torres stepped forward and whispered, "If you handle this well, it could be a great discovered talent story. If not..." She let the sentence trail off, but her eyes finished it. Isabella took one step forward, microphone still in hand. "Caleb Morgan has just given us a wonderful performance." But from the back of the room, a woman's voice cut in. The longtime housekeeper, Maggie Lewis, didn't raise her voice, but it carried firmness. "No, but..." "Everyone heard what you said." A ripple moved through the crowd. Jonathan Price slowly nodded, as if putting a stamp of confirmation on the moment. "I'll be direct his technique, emotion, and control meet professional performance standards. Not a single thing lacking." All eyes turned to Isabella, waiting for her response. She felt the heat rising along her back under hundreds of stares. In that instant, the offhand joke she had tossed out to regain the upper hand had become a rope binding her in place. Caleb didn't smile, didn't shrug. He stood tall, close enough that he didn't have to raise his voice. "I don't need a wedding, but I was hoping you could keep your word in a way that matters." "In front of everyone?" Isabella blinked once. The phrase "in a way that matters" echoed in her mind, pushing aside the crisis management formulas she had memorized. Richard Calloway gave a soft chuckle, trying to redirect attention toward himself. "Come on now, aren't we all just having fun?" But no one took the bait. The entire room stayed focused on the space between Caleb and Isabella. Jonathan Price broke the silence. "This isn't a bet anymore. This is about words and responsibility. If you'll back out, do it in front of everyone." Maggie Lewis remained still, but her eyes seemed to say more. She had seen far too many staff erased from sight simply for not fitting the image. She knew this was a rare chance for one of them to stand in the center without being hidden. Isabella drew in a deep breath, trying to steady her voice. "What do you want?" "Exactly," Caleb answered without hesitation. "Say my name, apologize publicly for making me the butt of a joke, and commit to creating opportunities for others who've been overlooked like me." The words landed cleanly, like music without a wasted note. A few guests gave small nods. The approval wasn't loud, but it was enough to shift the room in his favor. Isabella understood this was no longer about gracefully turning the situation around. This was a test of whether she dared to put her reputation on the line in exchange for something numbers could never measure. PR leaned in, whispering, "We can spin this into a human interest press release. No legal promises, just an initiative." But Isabella knew that the silence after the music would vanish forever if she chose the safe route. Caleb still stood there, unmoving. He didn't press her, but his steadiness made any step backward glaringly obvious. The chandelier's light reflected in his eyes, not glittering like Isabella's diamonds, but steady and calm, the light of someone who knew exactly where he stood and why. No one else in the room spoke. Only the soft clink of a glass was set down, and the steady hum of the air conditioning remained, like a quiet count marking the wait for her answer. Isabella knew that whatever she chose, tonight would be remembered not for the auction items or the amount of money raised, but for the moment when a staff member stood up, said his name, and asked the most powerful person in the room to keep her word in front of everyone. And she was about to decide, right here. Isabella Harrington held the microphone close to her chest, as if the moment she let go, every eye in the room would drop straight onto her. Her breathing slowed, but her heart beat faster than the rhythm of a jazz drum in a downtown bar. She'd been used to controlling the story, setting the stage, steering public opinion. But this was the first time the stage was forcing her to answer a question she couldn't prepare for. Caleb Morgan stood exactly where he was, arms hanging loosely at his sides, shoulders relaxed. He didn't step forward, and he didn't look away. There was no sign of pressure, yet his silence carried the weight of an unfinished piece of music that the listener couldn't walk away from without hearing the final note. Jonathan Price shifted his stance slightly, his gaze moving from Caleb to Isabella. He didn't speak, but the slow nod was a reminder an opportunity like this doesn't come twice. Maggie Lewis stood at the edge of the hall, her hands still clutching a pack of tissues as if holding on to a lifeline. Her eyes scanned the faces in the room guests who had once brushed past employees as if they were part of the furniture. Managers who defaulted to Buddy instead of using a real name. She knew that if Isabella backed down, tonight would end like every other night. The lights would dim, everyone would leave, and nothing would change. Isabella took a deep breath. "Mr. Morgan," she began, her voice no longer as sharp as before. "If I do that, there will be consequences. For me, for the company, for shareholders." Caleb cut in, not harshly, but with firm precision. "For people like me, the consequences have been around for a long time. They don't show up on the quarterly report." A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. Richard Calloway frowned, muttering something to the person beside him, but no one cared. The entire room was focused on the two figures at the center. Jonathan Price stepped forward, his voice carrying just enough to reach the far corners. "I think everyone here understands this is no longer about the piano. It's about how a person is seen and called by name." He glanced at Isabella, as if stamping his point once more. Isabella briefly turned to Samantha Torres. Her PR manager tilted her head slightly, whispering, "If you have to give in, redefine it. Turn it into a commitment that benefits both sides." But Isabella knew this time. It couldn't just be a slogan or a charity program polished for brand image. Her eyes went back to Caleb. Specifically, "What do you want?" Caleb answered instantly, his voice even, as if reading a contract already printed in his mind. A public apology. Use my name. Commit to a concrete action for those pushed out of the frame. No ifs, no buts. The silence that followed stretched longer than usual. A young waiter in the corner tightened his grip on a drink tray, eyes wide, as if waiting for something he'd never seen happen. Isabella raised the microphone, then lowered it. Again. Her hand trembled slightly, though her face stayed composed. She had mastered this skill over the years, keeping the image intact even when chaos roared inside. "I need a minute," she said, stepping back. The entire room tracked her as she turned toward a small group of PR assistants and a major shareholder. They leaned in close, exchanging quick words. The murmurs felt like needles pricking at the already taut air. Caleb didn't move. He knew any hasty reaction would be read as impatience or arrogance. He avoided even glancing around. His eyes stayed fixed on the Steinway, as if reminding himself why he had stepped into the center of that hall. In the third row, Maggie closed her eyes briefly, murmuring, "Don't miss this. Isabella." The huddle broke. Isabella turned back, strolling now, but no longer avoiding his gaze. She lifted the microphone to her lips and began with a sentence that made a few guests instinctively straighten in their seats. "I will keep my word, but in the right way." A hum of mixed skepticism and anticipation filled the room. Jonathan Price raised an eyebrow, withholding judgment, as if wanting to hear it all before locking anything into memory. Caleb tilted his head slightly. Not agreement, not rejection. He waited to see what the right way meant and, more importantly, whether it would be the truth or just another layer of polish. The sound in the hall had settled into scattered murmurs, like waves hitting the shore but not yet deciding whether to retreat or surge forward. Isabella Harrington stood under the spotlight, microphone in hand, choosing each word like someone walking across thin ice. "I will keep my word, but in the right way," she repeated, this time slower, clearer, not as some reckless bet, not as a promise turned into a media circus, but as a real commitment. What happened tonight will never happen again to anyone else. Jonathan Price sat up straighter. He didn't clap, but his gaze softened, as if acknowledging she was stepping beyond the boundaries of safe answers. Isabella lowered the microphone and took a few steps toward Caleb Morgan. "You want me to recognize your name, apologize publicly, and do something concrete. I agree. But I also want you to understand that we do it all the way if we do this. There will be no forgetting about it a week from now." Caleb didn't respond immediately. He weighed the sincerity in her tone. The sharp edge from earlier was gone, but it wasn't complete trust yet either. A light cough sounded from the corner of the room. Maggie Lewis, who had been standing silently, stepped forward a pace, her eyes locking on Isabella. Doing it all the way means not just making promises when the lights are on. It means changing things when there are no cameras. Isabella nodded, not avoiding the point. "Yes, and I'm willing to put my name on those actions." Richard Calloway, looking bored, poured more champagne into his glass. He muttered to the person beside him, "The whole fundraiser's turning into a staff meeting." But the words sank into the background noise, unable to cut through the shifting atmosphere. Caleb took half a step forward, his voice steady and clear, as if making sure no one in the room missed a word. "Then let's start right now. Call me by my real name and apologize." The hall tightened for a beat. Isabella drew a deep breath, lifted the microphone, and gazed across the entire guest list. Caleb Morgan. Tonight I was wrong not to call you by your name, and wrong to turn you into a joke to cover an awkward moment. I'm sorry. No applause followed. Only another kind of silence. The kind Caleb recognized instantly silence when people are remembering. Jonathan Price leaned toward a reporter sitting in the outer row and spoke just loud enough for them to hear. Write that sentence exactly. No edits. The reporter gave a slight nod, fingers already on the keyboard. Isabella continued, her voice firmer now. The concrete commitments will be announced and implemented within 1 week. There will be a training program on respect and treatment of employees, a support fund for those whose talents have been overlooked, and changes to internal policies so that no one is ever told to stay out of the frame without reason. Maggie Lewis's shoulders eased slightly, her hand loosening its grip on the tissue. A few servers stationed at the edges of the room exchanged glances, as if hearing something they'd never been promised before. Caleb kept his eyes fixed on her, not shifting to anyone else. I'll believe it when I see action, but I acknowledge you said these words here, now. A camera shutter clicked. The event photographer captured the moment Isabella and Caleb stood at equal height, not as managers and employees, but as two people sealing an unspoken agreement in front of the room. Jonathan Price rose to his feet, a rare gesture for him. In my personal and professional capacity, I will record tonight, not as a scandal, but as a public commitment. The murmurs returned, but their edges were no longer sharp. They sounded like they were finding a new course, unsure where it would lead, but no longer treading the same worn path. Isabella stepped back, but this time not to create a power gap, rather to share the space. Caleb did not step back. He remained where he was, like a marker for others to measure their distance from the honesty that had just taken place. No one said it out loud, but everyone understood this moment would leave the room with them, and it would echo long after the last notes of tonight's music faded away. The light inside the grand hall of the Harrington Grand softened as the background band eased into a gentle jazz number. But the atmosphere was no longer the same as it had been earlier in the evening. The small conversations at each table were no longer about auction items or the names of the guests, but about the apology that had just been spoken in front of hundreds of people. Caleb Morgan stepped back toward the piano, resting his hand lightly on the wooden lid, as if needing something solid to anchor himself amid the room still buzzing with murmurs. He didn't leave right away, perhaps because he knew that once he stepped out of the light, the story would begin to fade, and he wanted this moment to stay anchored a little longer. Isabella Harrington handed the microphone over to Samantha Torres, then bent down to speak quickly with a few people from the group of shareholders. Their voices were low, but just loud enough for Jonathan Price, standing a few steps away, to catch words like timeline, fund, and policy. He stepped closer, not to interrupt, but to give a short nod, a signal that he would be watching, ensuring this wouldn't just live on paper. At the edge of the hall, Maggie Lewis walked slowly toward Caleb. She didn't speak at first, just placed a warm hand on his arm. The touch wasn't a congratulation, it was more like a confirmation that what had just happened was real, not a dream. Caleb tilted his head slightly and gave a faint smile, his first of the entire night. You know, Maggie said, her voice low enough for only him to hear. A lot of people here have never seen her apologize to an employee. Caleb replied quietly. I never thought I'd hear it either. A camera shutter clicked. In the corner of the room, a photographer had captured the two of them standing together, not as an artist and a housekeeper, but as two witnesses to the same moment. Nearby, Darren Blake, the security guard who had blocked Caleb at the door more than once, stood with his arms folded, his gaze no longer wary. When Caleb caught his eye, Darren gave a small nod, as if to say, I saw it. A thin thread of laughter rose from Richard Calloway's table, as if trying to pull the conversation back to its usual topics. But this time, a few people at the table responded only with polite nods before turning away. No one seemed eager to return to the old rhythm. Jonathan Price walked up to the piano. Caleb, he called, this time without any titles or nicknames. Tonight, you did something many musicians never achieve in a lifetime. You made an entire room change its rhythm of breathing. He extended his hand, and Caleb took it, the handshake firm and equal. Isabella turned back, her eyes sweeping across the room before landing on Caleb. She approached no longer with the stride of a host in control, but of someone who had just accepted an agreement. I'll send you next week's schedule. All 3 of the first projects will start immediately. I want you at the kickoff meeting. Caleb nodded, without adding the usual polite thanks. Between them, no embellishments were needed, only action. Guests began rising from their tables. The large doors opened, letting in the sound of high heels and the cold night wind of New York. A few servers stayed behind to clean up, but unlike before, they glanced toward Caleb, some smiling, others giving small nods. When the lights in the hall dimmed further, Caleb finally stepped away from the piano. He walked through the main aisle, the very path he had always avoided. Maggie walked slowly beside him, and this time, no one told them to stay out of the shot. Outside, the city's chill wrapped around him, but it didn't make him shiver. In his pocket, there was no contract, no bonus, only a public promise and the feeling that, this time, it wouldn't be carried away by the wind. A week after the night at the Harrington Grand, the hotel's conference hall opened its doors again, but this time there were no evening gowns or champagne glasses. The chairs were lined up neatly, a projector was set in the middle, and a printed project timeline hung clearly on the wall. Isabella Harrington entered through a side door, without the usual entourage. She wore a white blouse and black slacks, and her hair was tied back neatly. Caleb Morgan was already there, chatting with a few housekeeping staff and security guards. Maggie Lewis sat in the front row, her small notebook still in hand for taking notes. Jonathan Price, attending as an observer, leaned lightly against the wall, his eyes scanning each face. He wanted to see if this was just a show or a real step forward. Isabella began the meeting by reading aloud the commitments she had made publicly, the Morgan Lewis Scholarship Fund for Musical Talent. The Keys for Change Community Concert Series has free tickets. Bias awareness training for all management. Removing the no staff in the frame policy when unnecessary. Increasing the minimum wage and health benefits for the night shift. Opening an anonymous feedback channel and holding regular listening sessions. She read each item clearly, then signed the printed copy posted on the board, her pen strokes strong and decisive. When the pen left the paper, the room fell silent as if to hold on to the moment. Caleb spoke up. Keeping a promise isn't just about signing your name. It's about how each of us acts when no one's filming. A young security guard raised his hand. I'll start by calling my colleagues by their names instead of Buddy. The room chuckled softly. Warm laughter, not mocking. Jonathan Price nodded, jotting down a few lines. He didn't need to write much, just one sentence when a promise steps off the stage and into everyday life. When the meeting ended, no one dispersed right away. Maggie walked up to Caleb. I used to think some doors would never open. Turns out, it just takes someone knocking at the right time. Isabella came over, handing Caleb a small envelope. This is the schedule for the first community concert. I want you to open the show. Caleb looked down at the printed date and location of a small theater in Brooklyn. He folded it carefully. I'll be there. But not for me. For the people who need to see that their voices can be heard anywhere. Isabella gave a faint smile. Not a polite smile, but one of acknowledgement. Both of them knew the journey of keeping a promise had only just begun. What happened at the Harrington Grand didn't just change one night's party. It changed how an organization looked at its own people. Caleb Morgan didn't leave that concert with a check or a title, but with something far more powerful: recognition by name, by promise, and by action. Perhaps, in this noisy world, the hardest thing isn't making a promise, it's keeping it, even when the lights are no longer on. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit subscribe to The Soft Why, share the video, and join us in spreading moments that turn words into action.